Here's this week's Steam Code Raffle winner. I give a Steam code for a free game away with every video I do, and all you have to do to enter is leave a comment that wouldn't violate Twitter's terms of service. Make sure you have contact info in your YouTube profile so I can reach out to you. A complete list of games to choose from is in the description below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a chance to win. Now on with the show.
Shouldn't you be making a video?
I thought you hated my videos.
No, just you. Answer the question.
Man, I don't know. I've had writer's block lately. I don't know what to talk about.
What about Starlink, Battle for Atlas? You wrote a review on that when it came out. Also, you got like 18 hours of capture footage just cluttering up your computer.
Yeah, fine. It's been long enough since I got burned by Star Fox Zero.
You're just using that as an excuse. Now shut up and get to work. And give me my eye back while you're at it.
Nope. Hi folks, my name's Gheeotine, and welcome to The Gaming Guillotine, where I extol the excellent and execute the poorly executed. And speaking of poorly executed, does anyone else remember Star Fox Zero? I remember Star Fox Zero. I wake up screaming. A couple years ago, I did a review of Star Fox Zero on the Wii U. To summarize, while glimpses of something great were present, Nintendo's irrational mandate to force control gimmicks doomed Platinum's attempt at the franchise. It was so horrible to control that it ruined my status as a superfan of future Star Fox games, if not most franchises in general. However, that wasn't the last thing that Nintendo has done with Star Fox since then. That's not to say they've made many Star Fox games. Beyond today's subject, he's mostly been in cameo appearances such as a staple fighter in Super Smash Bros. In fact, Nintendo seems almost insistent on not doing anything with him. As I said, Platinum developed Star Fox Zero, and in 2018, Ubisoft announced that it would be teaming up with Nintendo in order to feature Star Fox prominently in their new game, Starlink Battle for Atlas. I remember at the time that this announcement got me very interested, but I was careful not to be excited. As I said, Star Fox Zero and Nintendo's attitudes towards it were something of a come-to-light moment for me. Actually, that would be the best way to put it. I didn't see the light. I embraced the darkness of cynicism. I stopped buying the hype of any title, and while interesting concepts garner my attention, I don't put any investment into the expectation that anything will be good until it's been released and can be assessed. This has served me greatly because it saved me from being disappointed by release events like No Man's Sky, Fallout 76, and Cyberpunk 2077. But let's get back to the focus. With Ubisoft at the reins, I didn't know what to expect, but I had a sneaking suspicion it would be an iteration of the Ubisoft Sandbox. After all, we've got Ubisoft Sandbox Tropical Shooter Edition, Ubisoft Sandbox Redneck Shooter Edition, Ubisoft Sandbox Societal Collapse Edition, Ubisoft Sandbox Ancient History Edition, Ubisoft Sandbox Prehistoric Edition, Ubisoft Sandbox Platforming Adventure 1 and 2, and in 2018 my suspicions were confirmed when we received Ubisoft Sandbox Furry Space Shooter Edition. Well, that may not be 100% entirely fair. Star Fox was prominently featured, but only on the Switch version, which on the other hand did receive most of the marketing and attention. However, Starlink also received releases on the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC, with any signs of Nintendo intellectual property removed with surgical precision, and as such, I didn't feel the need to even give them the time of day. Remember, the only reason I even gave it a second glance was the fact that it was Ubisoft trying their hand at a franchise that Nintendo seemingly didn't care much about, so the versions without anything Nintendo in it are of less interest to me than a coal executive's stance on global warming. That being said, the primary difference beyond just the main presence of the Star Fox characters are the degree with which they're implemented in the main story, and they even have a side story that runs in tandem to the main campaign. The main story campaign follows humans in a quest to find another galaxy for exploration and settlement. While the main narrative can be thoroughly summarized rather quickly, I'd like to focus on the beginning because I did kind of like it, if not for its immediacy, then for its comedy effect. You're given the most basic of context, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose with very little explanation. Who is that? What the f*** is going on? We're under attack? Fantastic! Space combat ahoy! And in this tutorial phase, we are immediately introduced to the Star Fox crew who just happened to be in the neighborhood and figured they might as well help out another space crew that's under attack, and because of that, they're now part of this game. The Star Fox story is simple enough where it can easily be slotted alongside the main game. Wolf O'Donnell is on the run for his crimes and they're searching for him to bring him to justice. I would have ignored the main story quest entirely, but there are RPG elements, and after a while I found myself woefully underpowered on the later stage levels because they were obviously more of a focus, so I went back to go do more main campaign stuff. Going back to describing the main campaign, it's not terribly original or compelling, but it keeps things moving at least. Spoiler alert, although like I said, you're not missing much if you must play before listening to me. After a few encounters with an unknown evil force, the father figure of the expedition gets put into danger and discovers a plot that will foil the goal of the main protagonists, and they must be stopped to save the galaxy. The father figure dies, everyone turns the dial on the back of their head to sad for 2 minutes, then we go off to defeat the final boss, save the galaxy, and prepare the human race for intergalactic imperialism. Before I forget though, on the Switch version, Fox McCloud is present in almost every single major cutscene that has the main crew. This gives me the impression that the Switch version was the priority on the development and that the other ports were more done as a formality to ensure that they weren't leaving a single cent on the table, but more on that later. One of the two things that I want to put heavy focus on is the gameplay. I speak with no exaggeration that the vehicle piloting and combat from this game might be the best that the Star Fox series has ever been associated with. I'm entirely serious. For narrative reasons, the very start of the game forces your ship to not be able to do much more than hover a few feet off the ground, but even this mode has a satisfying sense of speed, and the mechanics in this game prove that the R-Wings are capable of strafing on land better than any Landmaster or chicken walker. And speaking of combat, the controls are so tight and responsive that I never felt like a situation was beyond my ability to respond. With movement and combat honed to such a pleasing degree, even the Ubisoft sandbox model has difficulty becoming tedious and monotonous. The quest structure on any given area is fairly simple. Find the area of the map that needs to be made safe, fight a few enemies and destroy their tower's power cores, and then expand your own influence by building your own beacons, fetching resources, and destroying enemy outposts. It's an easy formula outline, but there's a reason it's so ubiquitous. When done well, it works and is satisfying. When it's not done well, it's a cavalcade of tedium and slog that's usually hidden behind an obstructive monetization practice. Speaking of obstructive monetization practices, that leads me to the chief complaint I have with this game. I've tried avoiding talking about it so far, but like the game's progression, I can't avoid it. To give some backstory, and to go on a brief historical tangent, the Skylanders franchise was introduced in 2011. Published by Activision, it was the introduction of the toys-to-life subgenre, and for a time was one of the most ridiculously overexploited monetization fads ever seen. Using special plugins for assorted games, you had a real-life figure that you could place on a pedestal, and doing so would grant you access to that character in a game with unique abilities, attributes, weapons, and all manner of other expansions. On top of a base game, a single figure could cost anywhere from $5 to $15, and it wasn't uncommon for an individual game to feature dozens of these figures to be unlocked. You can see how lucrative this would become and why so many games leaned so hard into it. Nintendo is still doing it with their Amiibo series, which also released in 2014. However, if you recall earlier, I described this as a fad. It indeed was, and as is with all fads, it eventually dies out. Starlink Battle for Atlas was Ubisoft's attempt to jump onto the toys-to-life gravy train. In 2018. 7 years after it had begun. Do you begin to see the issue? Their late arrival was the problem. The second was the fact that they had to shoehorn a way into the game that would allow it to facilitate this monetization scheme. And let's not try to diminish the blame for the toys-to-life strategy as a whole. I will fully acknowledge it was a clever way to appeal to kids, but it was also incredibly anti-consumer for the notion of the typical game. It took out the feature of unlockable characters, weapons, skins, mechanics, and even levels, and then locked them behind a plastic paywall that was stapled to a figurine that allowed someone to charge amounts that would have otherwise led to individuals showing up at any other publisher with torches, pitchforks, and Molotov cocktails if it was just DLC. With the gift of hindsight, we can recognize this as such. At the time, many were suckered in. Even me. To this day, I have a box with every available figurine for Starlink just sitting in storage collecting dust. But to illustrate how ridiculous this got, I calculated the approximate cost for all the figures at the time of their release. A starter set cost $75, and bear in mind that if you got the Switch version, the starter sets for PS4 and Xbox versions came with a different kind of ship, so if you wanted to complete the collection, you had to buy one of those, and it was another $75. There were 6 additional ship and weapon packs that each cost $12, along with 2 additional pilots and 4 weapon packs that cost about $5. And I went the full mile by purchasing and importing the European pre-order exclusive figurine of Startail, which I can only guess cost me about $60 alone. So tallying 2 starter packs, 6 ships, 2 pilots, 4 weapon packs, and my own obsessive need for completion with the special figure, the total comes to around $312 before taxes. I'm a idiot. I myself am proof that this was a viable business strategy, but as illustrated by the overabundance of starter kits by the next year, it wasn't the earth-shattering success that Ubisoft was hoping. And the only expense wasn't extracted from my wallet. Those additional ships gave extra lives when things got hairy, and those weapons were necessary to a certain degree due to elemental attributes that included a rock-paper-scissors style system and layer of strategy into standard combat. And the problem was, if you did decide to go with the figurine option, that it wasn't a matter of you just being able to use it once and then have it accessible from that point forward. Technically, yes, you could use it for a few days before you needed to actually attach it again, but if you just wanted to play the game and not have to bother with constantly handling awkwardly shaped plastic on top of mounts on your controller, then you would have to additionally shell out for the same figures as DLC. It's been a while since I've had to use this thing, huh? Now, the laundry list for things that Ubisoft executives can go off and for is expansive, including, but not limited to, an exploitative environment rampant with sexual harassment. But today we're focusing on the fact that, as with so many other companies, they took a scalpel to a feature that should have been incorporated as a standard, complete product and held it behind a paywall. And that sucks, because the gameplay was good. If they hadn't jumped on the Toys to Life bandwagon 7 years late and just released these games as a complete product and only focusing on the Switch version, which vastly outsold the other versions, by the way, then we could have seen a resurging desire for yet another one of Nintendo's often neglected franchises. Or it could have been absolutely the same and I'm wasting my breath with this entire paragraph. Who knows? I don't have access to the multiverse. And so, let's be respectful of the final moments of this molded plastic that represents the shoehorning of intrusive monetization practices into otherwise perfectly acceptable game titles. The Switch version of Starlink Battle for Atlas, for me in the very least, is part of the Star Fox franchise. I don't give a single solitary about what Nintendo considers canon, because they obviously have no idea what they're doing with this franchise anymore. That being said, if you can track down a copy of the Switch version and keep control on expenses and just get the DLC so you can unlock enough content to complete the game as necessary, I would argue that this is one of the better, if not an unofficial, Star Fox game. Of course, I'm heavily biased as a former Star Fox superfan, but there you have my final word on it. And just for a little peek behind the curtains, I've had this video in some degree of writing or scripted in at least 4 different forms since 2018, and I have no idea why it took me so long.
I do.
And why is that, oh master of the unwanted interruptions?
Because you procrastinate like
Alright, come here, you mother...
What are you doing? Where's my eye? What are you doing? What? Stop! Put the shotgun away! Gee, put the
Hey, look at that, it's the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe and remember that commenting can actually win you a free prize. So until next time, this is Gheeotine saying thanks for watching and keep your head on your shoulders. Jesus Christ, that did not go as I planned. I hope I didn't accidentally break something.